I'm Indy Neidell from the Great War YouTube channel, and I'm here at the Tank Museum Bovington, and these are my top 5 favorite tanks. Coming in at number 5, the Mark 8. Now, I have to say that until about half an hour ago, this was not actually on my top 5 list at all. But walking around the museum and being right next to the tanks, you see that this is such a monster that you can't not have it on your list. I'm not going to tell you which tank it knocked off my list. That's a topic for another day. But the Mark 8, it was a joint British-American venture, right? And these never actually saw action during the First World War, but they were going to win the war in 1919. They were designed to win the war. They're compartmentalized. They're actually longer. The reason it's a monster is it's actually longer than, say, the Mark 4s and the Mark 1s, because the tanks were designed to go across the trenches, right? But the Germans, not being fools, thought, well, if they can go across the trenches, why don't we make our tanks make our trenches wider? And the British and Americans responded by designing a longer tank. So number 5, this monster, the Mark 8. Number 4, the Mark IV, in all its glory. This was a British tank. Now, the Mark I was the first tank that actually saw battle, but the Mark IV was really when tank doctrine and tank tactics began to mature and saw the first real successes in battle. And now, a lot of people, when they think of tanks, people today think of tanks, they think of tanks as a German thing because in all the films you see the Tigers from the World War II and stuff. But it was the British that really pioneered tank development. And the Mark IVs really began coming of age. Now, they were used throughout 1917, but at Arras and Passchendaele, they hadn't really got their tank doctrine figured out and didn't know how they were going to be used in battle. Once you got to Cambrai, and you saw from the first day at Cambrai, when over 400 of these were deployed, that's when you really saw success and saw what the tank could really do. So me, as a World War I historian, thinks, well, that was a groundbreaking day, and this was a groundbreaking tank. So number 4, the British Mark IV. Number 3, Little Willy. This is where it all began, right? This tank is on my list mainly for sentimental reasons. In 1915, the British Landships Committee, in just 6 weeks, built this, the first real tank prototype. Now, I know if many of you were choosing your 5 favorite tanks, they would be for maybe firepower or range or success in some big battle. And yeah, looking at it objectively, Little Willy was a failure, sure. I mean, you look at the design, it couldn't cross a German trench. It would get bogged. It would hit and go down. And that led to them making the rhomboid design of, say, the Mark I and the Mark IV, which were, in fact, deployed. But this still, because it was the first, because it led to all others and was a breakthrough in thinking for how to break the stalemate, which eventually it would help lead to, it makes my list at number 3. I have also another sentimental reason for this being on my list. When I was younger, I used to paint houses. And in painting houses, you'd have music on in the background. And a lot of the time, we would play Sweet's Greatest Hits. And track number 9 on Sweet's Greatest Hits was the song Little Willy from sometime in the mid-'70s. And I really liked that song. Little Willy, Willy won't go home, but you can't push Willy around. Willy won't go. So, for that sentimental reason, and for this being first, it is number 3 on my 5 favorite tanks. Number 2, the A7V. Now, this was the only tank the Germans manufactured during the war. 20 of these saw combat in 1918. Now, Germany lagged behind the French and the British in tank production, but they did something else. They would capture British tanks like the Mark IVs and turn them into Beutepanzer. They'd take them back to their workshops and replace the British weapons with German weapons that they had tons of ammunition for, and then field them against their original owners. Now, this had a huge crew. You had a crew of 18. You had 17 guys and an officer in there. And you can see how big it is just to go inside. Also here on the back here, it says Schnuck. Now, you can make of this what you will, but rock, paper, scissors in German is called Schnick, Schnack, Schnuck. So maybe that had something to do with it. Yes, it definitely had something to do with it. But my favorite thing about this tank, and the reason that it's number 2 on my list, is because no 2 of the A7Vs were exactly alike. Being German and wanting to do everything to the highest standard of the day, all of these were handmade. So all of them have variations. They're slightly different, which you don't see on the other tanks. So that's why the A7V Number 2 on my list. And number 1 on Indy Neidell's list of my favorite tanks is a French tank. It is the Renault FT-17, right here. Now, this is an awesome machine. This was built in 1917. The French had had a couple of failures with their 2 models before, but this would be really successful. Thing is, you can see it's kind of a product of the times. This is a wooden wheel. You don't think wooden wheels belong in tanks, but this is, again, 1917. However, this is the first modern-looking tank because it had the turret, you know, the rotating turret. And that's what you think of when you think of tanks today. You picture a tank with a rotating turret. And that's where this began. Now, you can see that this is pretty small. So it's not going to be able to drive across a German trench like the Mark 8 that we saw, which was that monster that could cross the extra wide trenches. This would just fall in, obviously. But it wasn't designed for that. This was designed to be built and sent out by the hundreds as like a swarm of mosquitoes covering the battlefield. But none of those reasons are the reason why the FT-17 is my favorite tank. The FT-17 is my favorite tank because it's cute. I mean, look at it. It's really cute. Look, you can get it from the side. You see it? Wouldn't you like to have one of those? I call this one Dave. This is Dave, the cute little FT-17 tank. So there you have it, my list of my 5 favorite tanks. There are many more that I actually like, but these are the ones I really love, in particular, Dave, right here. So there you are, Indy Neidell's top 5 favorite tanks. Now, you should definitely subscribe to the Tank Museum's YouTube channel, and please support them on Patreon so they can continue doing all of this awesome work. And you really should visit this place because it's incredible. Keep on tanking.